Good afternoon, YouTube. Hopefully I can. Oh, great. Hold on. Let me pause. Haven't had a disturbance yet recording these, but I like to do it in one shot in one take. Okay. Good afternoon, YouTube. Well, morning. James Zero here, back with another quick movie review. This is the third X-Men movie in the new trilogy, and this one's X-Men Apocalypse. Stars James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Evan Peters. Sorry, I'm scratching my head. Jennifer Lawrence, Nicholas Hoult, Oscar Isaac, Olivia Munn, Alexandra Shipp, and this is pretty much like every other X-Men film. It's of course, a period piece in the decade of the 1980s. And one of the, of course, themes of it is, global disaster, giant world shattering event. Pretty much like the first two, First Class is more of a spy semi-thriller, and then you had Days of Future Past, which was like a time travel story. And with this one, I'm very mixed. What I do like about the X-Men films is that they create the drama, and then the comic book stuff is like secondary. And even with the Batman films, I believe it was the same thing. And it's kind of funny how a lot of these movies get, a lot of hate. Some people do love them because, of course, how it's cast and who's in it. And some of the actors are really perfect, like the guy that plays young Cyclops, and of course, Sophie Turner that plays Jean Grey. To me, they did a good job with, with what they had. And of course, visually, they all match the comic book counterparts. I'm going to start this off, I think, by talking about the movie and then going into the lore. So, pretty much, the opening starts with Apocalypse, also known as the Sabah Nur, which is Arabic for the first one. And he's the world's first, mutant. And in the scene, he's trying to he actually did transfer his consciousness into a stronger mutant who can heal. But, of course, his followers had trapped him into the tomb. And in the story, mutants are pretty much, since they came out earlier in this new timeline, they're a little bit praised more. But at the same time, it's like what Mystique said. They may have accepted us, but they're more polite about it to us in public, depending on the situation and scenario, I believe. And also, what powers you might have. So, you're not going to go up to Magneto and say something because he could just telepathically kill you with metal, or something like that. But Apocalypse, is resurrected, and he sees that, the weak are in charge. And it's kind of ironic because the movie takes place in the 80s where capitalism was very, very high, at least in America. And other comic book properties had even talked about this. I know one of the Batman stories did because it had Ronald Reagan in the story. And I believe Watchmen, had a little bit sprinkles in their story about it. But it was other things during that time that were going on that they had talked about. But it was, Apocalypse was, pretty much saying how, the weak have taken over. And of course, we had, I think that was like, no, it was a Cold War, and we had a lot of nukes. And the part that really got me the most is when he said no more swords, no more slings, no more weapons. And what was it? You can fire your arrows from the Tower of Babel, but you can never strike God. And it's kind of funny how, of course, Apocalypse had that God complex, but come to find out he really wasn't as strong as he thought he was. I know in the Marvel universe, he is one of the strongest characters. I say if you make like a top 10 list, he's going to be on there. I know a few other X-Men might be. And of course, Franklin Richards from the Fantastic Four, but he doesn't really come compared to like, those cosmic beings who indirectly gave him his abilities, which is in the comics. But to continue on with this story, the whole alien part really wasn't in this movie. I know in early drafts of the script, I know Bryan Singer had thought about it, but I get he changed his mind, of course, with the next story. I think he was saving it for that, even though to me they should have went deeper with it. And of course, if you see Deadpool 2, they kind of hinted it, with Shatterstar. He was from Mojo World, but back with this story, the big heavy you know risk that was in this movie, since he can transfer his consciousness, which was a power I think the Shadow King had. I don't think Apocalypse ever had it. What made it dangerous is that he was planning to next to take Charles' body, and he would have had control of everybody on the planet, which to me would have been a little bit interesting, to like somewhat see, because I know in one timeline in the comics, Apocalypse did take over the Earth. I think it was in, I want to say Age of Apocalypse story, but don't quote me on that. I am an X-Men fan, but I know a lot more people who are bigger X-Men fans than me. But with him trying to take his ability, it explains how, in this timeline, how Apocalypse, Charles had got bald. And the funny thing, in my little personal theory, how people say how at like in the next movie in the 90s, how they don't age, even though these movies have a lot of continuity issues. I think it's the fact that since they fought Apocalypse, or being in contact with him, some of them didn't age, especially with Magneto and Charles, because since he halfway tried to transfer his consciousness in there, I know his abilities had enhanced just a tad bit. And of course, Magneto's did, he can control and move the earth. And of course, Storm, since he enhanced, her abilities, made him and her and Magneto horsemen. I think that really prolonged, their life, at least with those two, but of course people didn't want to quote me on that, because you got to take the fact that Beast is still young in the 90s and X, Y, and Z. Personally, I really don't care. It was just a fun little theory to throw out. But like I said, these movies have a lot of continuity issues. You could definitely say that, with the character of Raven, because even Beast had said, even though she'll be 40, she'll still look like a teenager. So you can rule that one out. But I did like the attempt they did on Apocalypse. It was kind of funny how a lot of people thought he was going to be purple when this movie came out, and come to find out it was really the backlight for the portal ability he had. And also the costume designs were really good. It had that nice Egyptian celestial out of this world look, and a little bit. What I was disappointed by is that, of course, Apocalypse was depowered. He is a lot stronger in the comic books, with the alien technology, and not to mention the abilities he has. And they kind of teased it in the astral plane, where him and Xavier were fighting, and he changed his subatomic level. But I guess it is what it is, because even in the MCU, they depowered a lot of their characters just so they wouldn't be OP. Doctor Strange is a very good example. He is strong without, that Eye of Agamotto, especially dealing with time and dimension warping. But also, I like the music in this. Hans Zimmer did the music for this, I believe. I know he did it for Dark Phoenix, but music was so good. I got the soundtrack for this, as well as Days of Future Past and First Class. I know Hans didn't do that one, but 3 tracks in particular, it had, that Hollywood Egyptian type music where I think they're singing in Arabic in the background. And of course, one track in particular is called Beethoven Havoc, where the scene where Apocalypse controls all of mankind through Cerebro and through Charles, and he launches all the nukes. And I got the whole track of that, and I listen to it frequently. It's a nice classical piece. I wonder if they have a whole 5-minute track of that, because whoever had cut it, they did a good job with just the minute and 53 seconds version of it that was used in the film. Another disappointment I want to talk about this film. I think this is the first movie that teased Mr. Sinister at the end, at the Acolyte Lake, where Wolverine had his cameo. Because I teased it again in Deadpool 1, and I was just disappointed because now we were definitely not going to see it because, Fox doesn't have the rights to, X-Men anymore. Hopefully, we'll see it in the MCU. And I know Comics Explained had a theory indirectly linking Mr. Sinister. Well, is Namor, Mr. Sinister, and Wolverine will be like the first waves of mutants being introduced in the MCU, especially with Namor. But we'll see what happens. And going to the comic book parallels, the thing in pretty much as a whole, the two things I'm really disappointed with is that, the Celestials, of course, isn't in this, mainly because, the MCU, that's their stuff. They would have got sued if they would have used that. And I know the other part, it was just in my head. And the Shi'ar Empire. Even though that's pretty much, I think with mainly, I think I'm going to talk more about them in X-Men, Dark Phoenix. But yeah, just a brief history on Apocalypse. Because my aunt and uncle had a debate, about this. They asked me when this movie came out, how was it? And I told them, and even my uncle had agreed because they probably, had that talk of what I would say. And I pretty much said the movie wasn't bad. I liked the drama that was in it because that's why you really care about it, especially, with Michael Fassbender and Magneto. And they cut some of his scenes in this as deleted scenes, especially when his family dies. And Michael Fassbender had improv like a Jewish lullaby, I believe, and then he ended up killing everyone who was there that killed his family. But yeah, even my uncle wasn't shocked when I said, the drama and everything was good, because that's what the X-Men was built on, those intimate relationships. But with the lore is what I was pissed about because, Apocalypse was depowered. He got his look and, his additional powers through the alien celestial technology. Like, one of his mutant abilities was to understand stuff. I think it was I can't remember what the ability was called. It's like being a telepath, but you understand technology, and he uses the ability in this movie with hacking into radio waves, but pretty much to understand electronic and technological devices, or pretty much how things work. And if you see the show Heroes, that's what Siler's ability was. That's how he was able to take a lot of people's powers and host it inside of himself. With the celestial technology, that's how he was able, to have that look and, of course, increase his intellect. And on top of that, what a lot of people don't know, in Xavier's mansion, the Danger Room in the comics, I know at least in the 90s cartoon, it was from celestial technology, or it eventually did after they encountered Apocalypse on that show. But, me personally, if I was, to do an X-Men story dealing with Apocalypse, I would have went back with the comic books. I would have, built on the last recent history they did of him. I think he had like a mini series that really dissected, who he was living in the BCE era, all that millennia ago. And of course, in the historical context, he existed before Christ. I think he existed even around when Adam and Eve were created. If you want to go back, that's how long, he's been around. And, another nice little backstory. Pretty much I'm done talking about the comics and the movies at this point, but I heard a rumor that years ago, that they were thinking about adapting Apocalypse live action, either on the TV show or it could have been the movies. And rumor had it that Michael Clark Duncan was gonna, portray him, and he would have been perfect. He had that charismatic, deep voice, and not to knock off Oscar Isaac, I heard it was him, and of course they said at one point Josh Brolin was gonna do it too, but he already, he did Cable and Deadpool, and of course he's known as another big mad titan, which is Thanos. And he has a good, deep, calm, threatening voice as well. But it would have been interesting. And of course, as a good-looking brother that Michael Clark Duncan was, how he had that dark melanin skin, the blue hue definitely would have added to that contrast, and it would have been interesting to see. Hopefully, when I do my portfolio and I draw Apocalypse, I might use his face, as a model reference. But beyond that, that's pretty much all I have to say about this movie. We can talk about more of it in the comment section, and I will see you guys later. Peace. Oh, it's sliding down. Look at that.